record on this computer. All right, it is recording. So we are here for episode 9 of Living a Bold Life. And this is a guest interview series for anyone who is new to it. The first 8 episodes, first 2 months, have been a lot of experimentation on Instagram Live and whatnot. Those platforms are just not stable, so we're here in Zoom. So Adrian is getting to be my guinea pig and my little switcheroo. So thank you for that, Adrian.
Not a problem.
Yes, and speaking of which, tonight's guest is Adrian Addison. And the guests that I invite on here are people that I know personally. As you probably noticed, some of them I've known for a long time. Some of them I'll meet like a couple weeks later. I'm like, you're perfect for the show. It just kind of rolls how it rolls. But everyone that I invite on here is here because who I see them being and what I see them doing from that place of being is a person that I hold to be bold. And, you know, being bold doesn't necessarily mean what a lot of people think it means. It really means just a commitment to yourself, to inspire, to be inspired, and, you know, to do the challenging work, and be a model for that and be willing to share with others. So tonight's guest that we have is Adrian Addison. Welcome, Adrian. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. It's good to be with you. Good to be with you. May I share the guest with the guest real quick how I know you?
Yeah, that's fine.
So great. I know Adrian from my yoga training, which was called Rasika, and it was a really special training. And I've actually randomly, Adrian, I don't know if I've told you this, but I've met random people who've gone through programs after you and I, and somehow we just come together. And I've had a couple of them as clients and whatnot. And Adrian and I continued to be friends after we were in the training together. And he was also a client for about a year. And, right. You know, this is why I consider Adrian to live a bold life, because like every human being on the planet, circumstances occurred, and, you know, everything that happens are circumstances, right? Some are really, really big and like, oh my God, some are little, but ultimately it's who do we be in the face of them? You know, how do we navigate and learn and grow? And, you know, Adrian reached out and he was like, I just kind of want to make the best of things and grow and learn in the process. And to me, that's what living a bold life is. It's just being willing to keep growing and take yourself on. So that's how I know Adrian. And so I know him in many ways. And if I didn't share that fully with you, that's exactly why I invited you here.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I mean, yeah, you are a good friend of mine, and I have like great memories of teacher training, and it's very beneficial to me to have connections. And I think that was one of the things that I was working through when I was working with you, is learning how to reconnect with people. And that's like one of the things that helped me along my little path of, I call discomfort, you know, my bad, you know, my bad time. So that was great. And I really love thinking about that teacher training. So yeah, make some great friends.
Absolutely. And Adrian, I'm just going to share with everyone really briefly who you are, so they get an idea
Right.
Of a snippet of your journey in your lifetime. So Adrian Addison is a PhD, RYT 200. For anyone who's unfamiliar, that's our 200-hour yoga training. Mm-hmm. He is a perpetual student and a lover of life. Adrian is a systems administrator with BAE Systems and an instructor of Geosciences at the University of South Carolina. Adrian is a general badass, yes he is, that is writing a great American novel, creating transcendent art, so important right now, writing an Academy Award winning screenplay, or becoming the next great leader of our time. When Adrian is not working on the next masterpiece, he is motivated by learning from his two sons, Darian and Diego. Adrian lives by the motto that we are here to be great or inspire others to greatness. What I love about your bio is it's really written like with your vision statement almost, right? Like it's who you are and who you're becoming.
Yeah, I really, Jen, have learned this over the last probably year or so. That like, and once again, you know, we were chatting earlier about the work we did together, and one of the things that I took away with that is that if you have an idea, you have to write it down. And so one of the things that I do, I have a list of things that I have written, and I look at them on a day-to-day basis. So when I see it, that makes it real. And I've learned through time that, you know, having a good idea and not following through with it is just another good idea. And so I spent a lot of time over the last year during the pandemic just looking at other people who were successful. You know, there were some great documentaries on Netflix, and I started thinking about what made those people so successful is that they have an idea, they have a goal, and they are willing to put the work into achieving that goal. And so to me, when I learned through your working with you, was just writing the goals down is the first step, because that makes you aware of the goals, you know, and then going to do the work. And that's really, like, to me, that's the best part of it, is like doing the work now. So I'm like always learning, picking up books, looking at, you know, little documentaries on successful people, seeing how they do it. And that's what I love doing.
That is fantastic, y'all. We just got a bunch of solid gold and we haven't even gotten into the questions yet. And look at all the tips and tricks we just got, like truly. Because I love already, you know, and I was, Adrian and I were chatting for about 5 minutes before we started the interview, just to kind of get into flow, getting into each other's space. And, oh man, I totally lost my train of thought. I have yoga brain right now. I seriously did yoga till right before we started the interview. And I notice now if I go really deep in like a meditation or yoga, sometimes afterwards, I'm like a little bit floaty and I'm like, wait a minute, my thoughts are floating away. It's a good thing I have a heavy sweater on, y'all. Get my pillow and ground myself.
Right.
It'll come back though. But anyway, there was a lot of gold in there. Oh, and there it is. You already modeled that this kind of work, it starts simply, right? What if it just started with, hey, what if I write this down? It's so simple that most of us just won't even start there, right? We try to make it hard and complicated.
Right.
Like, what if we just start by writing down what we want and see what happens?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think I can express it enough how powerful that actually is. Mm-hmm. Because, like, you know, whenever I feel a moment of weakness where I don't feel good about myself, I think about that one Post-it that I have in my house that says, I'm number one. Right? And so at that point, it's not about ego. It's not about me being better than anybody else. It's about putting me in the right mindset. And that is what I've learned over the last year, is those that choose to be great or try to do great things have a mindset. And that mindset is something that can't be changed. And yeah, they have doubt. We all have doubt. We wouldn't be human if we didn't have doubt. But what keeps us going is the fact that we have that goal. And we're going to achieve that goal. You can't achieve goals by wishing. I wish I was this. I wish I was that. Nothing would ever get accomplished. And, you know, I was looking at documentaries like us traveling to the moon. Well, if you told somebody back in the 1960s that we were going to put people on the moon, people would have laughed at you. but somebody had the goal, and it started with writing it down.
Yep.
And
Cleared it.
we achieved it. And so if we can go to the moon, then I can do whatever I set my mind to.
Yes. And we are opening with a bang on that foot. Yes. And so speaking of that, and this first question could be related to a goal, but it might not be. And the first question I always start with is, and for those of us who've been making some bold moves for a while, this can be a challenging question. But for you, what was one of the boldest moves you have ever made? And it might have been a goal that you fulfilled, or it might have been, something that happened kind of so, whoa, I've got to do this now. Maybe it wasn't even a goal, but what was the boldest move that you have ever made for yourself?
I just think like one of the boldest moves I've ever made was whenever I left the university, back in 2014. There was a time where I was working as a researcher, and we were funded completely outside of the university, and the funding was ending. And I had some thoughts about continuing on with the university, and I had just some principles that I always live by. And I thought those principles were being broken. And so I decided to just go in a different direction. And I don't want to go into the details about it, because to me at this point, it's not that important. But there was some lines I was not willing to cross just because of my constitution. And a lot of people gave me flack for it. You're wasting a PhD. Why would you do that? You've got it made. I'd hear, all kinds of comments to that effect. But I changed careers. So I went into more computers, and it was very difficult. It was something that I probably didn't handle well, because I think I went into a depression because of the change of career, because of listening to outsiders. But looking at it on, today, November 18th, 2020, it was the right thing to do. Because it goes back to teacher training and to training in yoga, and listening to that voice. And that voice that speaks to everybody. I've learned to listen to that voice more, because that voice is me. And that's that's what I am. And so doing things that I didn't believe in was literally making me ill. And so that was one of that's like the toughest thing for me to learn. And I think that was my boldest move, because I think it set me on a path to where I am today. Now, it was a difficult path, but honestly, Jen, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And the reason I say that is because I am free now. Because I listen to that voice, and I live a happier, more fulfilled life because I made that choice. Because I think up until that point, I always tried to do things the right way, and things that what I thought other people wanted me to do, and not wanting to disappoint people. And I realize now that I don't have to worry about what other people think. I need to worry about what I think about myself. And I do worry about what my kids think in my, some immediate family, but I'm a different person because of that choice. And so that's one of the things I wanted to convey on here, was that was my bold move, was making that career change. And I know that a lot of that had to do with, I wasn't happy because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. So.
Yeah. And so what I heard when I listened was it was the career leap, yes, but it wasn't just that. It was doing it when you had it good. You're like, right? Like, because a lot of people have a hard time leaping if there's something not going off the rails. And it's even harder to make the leap when you have everyone around you, like chattering and being the loud voices. Um, Most people, I think, who aren't able to really stand on their own in that way will kind of cave to the voices. And I've done things similar, and I know how challenging that can be because they're almost like mirroring what your inner fears and inner critic says. So it's
Right.
like everything in your head, like amplified, chattering all around you. And to continue to trust your inner voice when there's that many things trying to distract it is no small feat. So I really love that because the first way you're answering this is you're really reminding people that we have to go within. We've got to go within. And, as you were sharing that, Adrian, it reminded me of my second leadership training was out in California, and they did everything very experientially. So we did this exercise where we had a group of people, and one person was like you making your choice, and then everyone else in your group were your inner thoughts, and they basically chased you around the room saying like the scary things to you. And so when you live it like in a physical realm, it's like, oh my God, is that what's happening in my body? And
Right.
so I actually thought of that when you said that, because ever since that exercise, like I take that stuff to heart in an even bigger way. And so I really want people to get like, that's courageous. And just because everyone around you doesn't agree, doesn't make you wrong, right?
No, no, and that's the thing. I mean, that was my first big big hurdle that I had to to get over, was the fact that I'm, I had to live my own life, and not only not listen to it but understand where it's coming from,
Right.
because we're all like, our society tells us not to make these leaps, because
Right.
we're sort of conditioned to do things a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear people changing careers, like you hear people like yourself going to be a life coach, you automatically have these negative thoughts pop up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, why is Jen doing that? She's so smart. She should be doing this, this, and this. And we never ask that question, well, what is good for Jen?
Yeah. Right.
What is good for her light? What is good for her voice?
That's so true. And so in your first answer, you kind of maybe started dancing into your second, which everyone does because the show has flow, is what I found.
Right.
It's funny. I wrote the 5 questions, and I'm like, people start answering them before they come. These must have been really organic questions. And so what I want to know from you now, Adrian, is for everyone, it might take some time to actually build up to the leap, to the move. But for most people, there is a moment where push does come to shove. And for you, what I already heard you kind of speak to about that was your role was no longer aligned with your belief system and your values. And so for you, that was actually so out of alignment. You were feeling the discourse in your body and you were feeling ill. And so that may have been the thing that got you to leap, but there may have been more. It may have been something else. So I would love you to actually answer in your own words. What was it that really got you to say, yeah, I could stay and I'm not going to, it's not aligned, I'm done? What was that?
Um, First of all, it was really difficult,
Mm-hmm.
because at the time, my kids were, gosh, maybe 10 or 11. My ex at the time didn't really understand it. I actually, and when you hear this, I'm going to, you're probably going to laugh at me. it was a Labor Day, and I'd already had thought about this, and we went paddle boarding, and I'm terrified of water. So I'm already out of my comfort zone, and I fell into the water. And as I got back up to the surface, my life flashed before my eyes, and I made that decision right then.
Wow. Oh, I love this. I had no idea.
Yeah, and you're the first person I've ever told this to. I
Really?
didn't tell it to Veronica at the time, but it something just triggered in my head and said, you cannot continue to live your life this way. And it was like a wake-up call, and every decision after that was made because of that one moment. I don't fully understand like the mechanism behind it and all the details, but I know it was that moment.
Oh, that's really powerful. And I had no idea. That's powerful. That's powerful. And, you know, I think sometimes it does take those moments for many of us, because it kind of, we dive off the diving board into the pool and we spring up. Sometimes without those moments, we just kind of wade and just kind of, you know, we just kind of wade around in the water. And it takes that sometimes to spring up. And a lot of people share about stuff like that. That's a pretty serious one, though, when your life flashes before your eyes. It almost reminds me of a former colleague of mine would always say that he was like in his 60s, I think, and he did a lot of coaching with men who were getting, you know, older in their career and kind of like what next and want to still stay feeling valuable. And he would always say that life is precious and life is urgent, you know, but often we don't feel that till we get closer to death. But then when you have this experience that reminds you it could come at any time, you know, it kind of reminds you of the preciousness and the urgency to not be doing things that don't fill your cup and fill your heart.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that like now I can look back on it and know that that's what it was.
Oh yeah.
I had no clue about it. And really it just happened. And I was just kind of like, what are you doing? And, you know, it's one of those things where I wish I would have confided at least with Veronica and the boys, but it was one of those things where I didn't really know how to deal with it, but
yeah,
that was the turning point for me. Yeah, that was it. I wish I could have said it was like more poetic or.
No, that is, it sounds like you almost got like a divine download, like all of a sudden, boom, implanted, right? Like, cause you followed something that you didn't understand. So you trusted it.
Yeah.
You trusted it. And so, you know, y'all, what I want you to hear out of this is notice when Adrian said, I wish I would have gotten some support. So keep in mind that if something like that comes out of the blue, that can be a lot to hold on your own. And sometimes seeking support of others, people can hold the space for you and let you unpack it and process it and just make the situation even more easeful and even more flowing. Deal with the voices that come at you that try to get you to stay, right? So like that is, you know, again, I love that you said you'd never go back, but you can see like, oh, there could have maybe been some ways to do it a little more easy. Same with me. I had the same experience.
Right. And that's the way I look at it. I look at the things that didn't go well for me. I use them as teaching moments for my kids. And I talk to them about it. And I talk to anybody who's willing to listen. And what I'm saying is that I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody else, but I'm saying don't make the mistakes that I did. Because I wouldn't change what I've done over the last 10 years, but there's some things that I would have liked to done easier. I'm good at teaching from my mistakes too, because I've made many of them. Right. And it's okay. And so I think that's another part that I had to learn. It's like, Adrian, you're going to fall.
Yep.
Again, you're going to fall. But knowing why you fell and not repeating that mistake is part of like life.
Yeah.
So that's what I teach. I try to teach to my kids is that, you know, or anybody who will listen, it's like you're going to fall and you're going to make mistakes. Just don't make them big mistakes, you know, and ask for help.
And something you said earlier was, you know, after that, it was kind of the catalyst to keep making more bold moves. And for most people it is, because we know that when we do the first really, really hard one like that, they always get easier and we know we can do it. So Adrian, you might not have a formula per se, but if you have a formula for living a bold life and continuing to make bold moves, like an example of that might be some people are like, oh, wow, to live that way and keep stretching my comfort zone and keep growing, I really need self-care, I need sleep, I need community. Everyone seems to have certain things, whether they're constant, whether they're seasonal, that they just kind of need to stay rooted, stay grounded, stay able to be in this conversation.
I mean, this is, you know, full disclosure. When you first approached me for this and I looked at the questions, I thought about going through and trying to answer the questions. And then I was like, you know what? I think Jen wants this to be organic. So I'm just going to answer them.
That's exactly what we want here.
Answer them
And
as
you know what? You could say the different thing on like every day of the week, and I probably would too for these. And that's why it's fun, because we get what is present in you now.
Right. My formula is I live by that motto in my bio, is that we're here to be great or to inspire, you know, inspire greatness in others. And I think in order to do that, you have to have your toolbox, the things that you need to make you better. One of the things that I always have a belief in myself, first and foremost. You know, I get up in the morning, I have bad days just like anybody else, but I do know when I walk in the room, I'm the only Adrian. And I have a lot to offer every time I come into the room. And I'm not going to let anybody take that away from me. That's the first thing for me. Two, I know where to go when I need to be grounded. So meaning that I know I have people who are going to tell me the truth about myself. Not those who are going to tell me what I want to hear, but say, hey, you know what, Adrian, you can do this a little bit better. Your communication the last few times hasn't been that great. And I have to have that. Third, I have to take care of the little things, meaning that sleep, food, clutter. I don't do well with clutter, so I have to constantly clean and pick up after myself, because that hurts me personally in terms of my creative thinking. When I see clutter, my mind gets cluttered. And then I know, finally, like I study, like we've talked about before. I go and look at successful people. One of the greatest documentaries, and people may laugh at me for saying this, is the one that Chicago Bulls did with Michael Jordan. Was really eye-opening. Phil Jackson does a lot of meditative stuff, and he talks about being in the moment. And that's one of the things I've learned to do, is when I'm doing something, that thing is the thing that I'm doing right then. And I need to be doing that, right? Not worried about what I need to do next, not worried about what I did last week, doing that thing and doing it the best that I can right then and there. And just like doing the work, Jen, that was one of my biggest things. It's like doing the work and not worrying about the results. Because we talked about like me doing art.
Yeah.
I didn't do art for a long time because I was always worried about being perfect. Now I just do it.
Oh, you know what? I actually, in one of my coaching groups, there's, you know, the one brave man with the rest of the women. It's always so many women. You were the only man in our teacher training, weren't you? So,
right.
One of my friends, clients, yoga students, he's always the brave lone male. And You just made me think of him right now.
Right.
But the things you listed, I was writing down over here, because it almost seems like some of the ones you mentioned you have to have, and maybe in order to have some of the other ones.
Right.
Like in the things that you said, little things like eating, cleaning, clutter, those can seem like little things, but I would actually say those are big things, right? Um, they're things that we can overlook, which is why they seem little, but they're kind of like the bottom of that physiological foundation, right?
Right.
Like, like I'm imagining like myself hangry, like, oh, and if I'm hangry, like belief in self, that's real tough.
Right.
I haven't gotten a lot of sleep. I notice I'm like a little bit more like shrill, right? Like my emotions are a little bit more up here, like,
Right.
so like the self-care stuff. So I love that you said that. And y'all, we're 9 episodes in, and Adrian is the ninth person to mention self-care. So it's a thing. It's a thing. It's a thing. It's not selfish. It's not selfish. You also mentioned support. I'm pretty sure you're also 9 out of 9 guests who've mentioned don't do it alone. And I think that's really powerful, because I think a lot of us who have achieved a lot, um, we need to hear that. I know I was a lone wolf for a while, and I had a story about what it meant to get help. So I love that you said that. And then the one thing you said was presence. And I love that, because it almost is like whatever you're doing in the moment can become a meditation. You know, a lot of people think of like a meditation as having to sit in, but if you can just kind of really get present, you can go into that flow state, and it
Right.
is so meditative. And I always love to really paint the picture to that. I believe meditation is whatever just lets you lose time, feel good, sit, rest. So I
Right.
love that you said that. And I love that you said no attachment to results. That's really important, right? And that was why you reminded me of my friend Steve, because he's actually right now begun a journey with watercolor. And it's part of a way that he can kind of explore and do the same thing. So I love that you said that, because I mean, these are all such practices of, if not self-care, self-love, self
Right.
things you do when you love yourself.
Right. Yep.
And I do love that the fact that the series is hitting on that, because I think I know the world is in a little bit of a self-care crisis. And that's why a lot of the things are happening. And, you know, people need to learn how to love themselves and be with emotions and do this work. So it's such a blessing to get to bring this stuff to the surface, right? Because we see a lot of the shiny highlight reel. We don't hear like, I almost died to get there. My life flashed before my eyes. I had to get help, right? Like that's the stuff people need to hear.
Yeah, and I think that is where I think a lot of the training that we have taken over the years
Yeah.
helps people like us, because
Yep.
you know, you take even this past election. Now, I'm obviously happy of the results, but there are half of the population who are not happy.
Yep.
And I've actually reached out to some of them and just pointed out some things and told them that, you know, the world is not going to collapse, and people are not going to come get you, and you're not going to lose your rights, and things of that nature. And what I like to do with people when it comes to that type of conversation is try to bring them back to the middle and say that, look, if you poll just about every American, we all have core values that are about the same. It's the extremes that are the differences. And the people, whoever they are, the media, the people who make the money, are using those extremes to get us to do things that are not like in our best interest. Because I'm positive, Jen, and I've obviously haven't polled every American, but we all have the same core
Yeah,
values.
absolutely. And I love that you shared that, because you know what, what I think really is portrayed with the guests on this show, who are really committed to living a bold life, caring for themselves in the way that they need to do that. You're able to bring that out into the world, right? Like, those are powerful conversations to have from love. You know, they're the challenging conversations that are required to move the needle, and they can be done in a non-divisive way. And I think that's so important to model, because a lot of not that is being modeled, right? So thank
Right.
you for saying that. That's I'm just present to who it allows you to be in the world.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I think to me, it goes back to what you said earlier, that it's so profound to me, is that life is fragile. Life is
Yep.
precious. So why am I going to worry about some person who voted this way, who's living in the middle of Montana? How is that? How I'm, why am I going to let that ruin my day?
Yeah, that's
Right.
beautiful.
Because
That's,
I still love that person, because that's a person.
yep.
Right. And I'm moving on. I don't think about it anymore. Like, okay, yeah, they differ. We
Yeah.
all differ, but we're
There's that
all here.
non-attachment, right?
Right. And that's the great part about it. It's like, okay, cool. You don't agree with me. That's
Yep.
fine.
We need more of that in the world.
I mean, we do, but
We're getting there. We gotta start. We gotta start.
well, I mean, I think you have to you have to look at it that way. I think that's the thing. I mean, that goes back to our initial conversation, writing it down.
Yeah.
It has to start small. Like, you're not going to, I hate cliches just like everybody else, but Rome was not built in
A
one day.
lot of them are actually really accurate the more I do this work. And so y'all, like, I want to invite you, like, right after you watch this or something, just write something down, see what happens, keep checking in on it, like, water the seed.
Right.
And let's just kind of show, right, like the impact. So imagine, obviously you don't know, you can't predict what would have happened for sure, but what do you get the sense may have happened, or what might your path be like now if you didn't make that bold move, you didn't quit, you either didn't have the experience, or you let everyone's voices get in your head and you said, it's not so bad, I'm just going to stay here? Where do you think that would leave you right now, to your best guess, without really knowing?
I know. I mean, I know the answer to the question, and I would be, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I would be numb, and I'd be just like another sheep in the herd, just doing, going to work, not enjoying work, just coming home and just having that empty feeling.
So y'all, if you're following the series, if you see me fidgeting over here, I'm wearing a brand new sweater. Clearly it's got some itchy marks. I'm like, oh, it's scratching me here now. It's scratching me here now too. It's the real unedited video. If y'all saw the series 2 episodes ago, that was Fabiola. And Fabiola actually made a very similar comment to you, Adrian, where she said, I don't want to be doing this and then just be on Netflix when I'm not working, because I don't want to feel anything and I don't want to be a part of the world and I'm a robot or something like that, right? So that was the same thing that she had said. So y'all, like, and again, like Adrian said, he's not trying to offend you. We don't want to make anyone wrong here. You do you. But there's a choice point where you've got to say, wow, it's really scary and I don't know how, but if I declare it and get some help, maybe it'll happen, and imagine what's possible. And there's a pretty predictable outcome if you decide to do nothing, because the outcome pretty predictably is going to be more of the same, so whatever path you're going down, you're just going to go further down the path. And so my reason for saying this as coach is not to be like, you got to pick the other one. Some coaches might, but not me. I just want you to know you got a choice. And I want you to look at what they are and really ask, am I okay with it? Because this is your life, right? And Adrian will tell you first thing, right? Like, as a coach, like, it's never about like getting people to do things. Like, that's not what we're here. We're just here to let you know you've got a choice, and you know, you just have to ask at the end of the day, are you willing to be with the impact of what you choose?
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. Because I know that if I would have chosen that path, I'm not sure I could handle everything that's going on in 2020.
Right, right. Yes. Oh gosh, I've said that so many times. So many
Because I
people
think,
that I've worked with and have worked with, or, you know, do this kind of work too, have said that so many times.
right, because like, when the pandemic hit, I'm sure you were similar to me. You can kind of see where this was headed, and you were going like, okay, yeah, this is not looking so good, but you knew that you would be fine.
Right. Yep.
And I knew that I'd be fine. Like, I know that I was going to be fine because I know I have the mindset and the tool set to handle this particular situation. And, just like you were talking about doing the series and having to change, like, I knew that you would figure it out. Like,
Right.
I didn't have to be like, oh man, Jen is not going to figure it out. I knew that you would do it. And so that's part of like this learning process that I love. I love having the conversations with people like you, because it's like we talk about the failures and we talk about the hardships, and that's how we get through them. And this is like 2020 hadn't been that, I understand it's bad, but
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, okay, I can deal with it.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's what the work of transformation is really about. It's about things. It doesn't mean it's easy, right? It doesn't mean we're not feeling deep feelings and strong feelings. It just means we know that if we go within, we're going to be okay. And we know that we're grounded, and you just see the world more elevated. So it's not just your microcosm, and if you can imagine what the eagle sees from above flying than in the tree, you're going to be okay when you can see the bigger picture.
Right.
And when you know how to get help and you're not fending for yourself, and when you realize, okay, I know the power is actually in here. And if I'm not experiencing that, it's because I've given it away. And, I don't mean to say that in some cases, people are absolutely not oppressed and have their power taken away, but we're talking about, more in this conversation, right? But I mean,
Right.
and even then in some cases, right? Like Nelson Mandela, like who he was when he was imprisoned, like I would love to know if I could be like him after all the work I've done.
Oh, absolutely.
It would probably take me a long time in there and a lot more work to ever get to that place.
Right. Right.
Like I think of like, where do people like that? Like how much have they had to do to get there? Like it's incredible to be that able to hold your own power, right?
Oh, yeah, and that's amazing. And those are the people that I go and look.
Yep.
I'll
Right
look
there.
for, and I look at, I mean, I do spending a lot of time looking at documentaries. I mean, I looked at like World War II stuff, Civil War stuff, Vietnam, and it's not like that I'm attracted to the train wrecks. It's just, for me, it's just about learning how we get to that point.
Yes.
What does it take to get to a conflict of that magnitude? And it's something that I learned through working with you, but I've learned through just yoga. It's that pulse, it's that push and pull, it's the dichotomy of the human being. We can do some really great things, but we're also capable of doing some really jacked up things.
Yep.
And like, once I started to accept that, Jen, that changed my thinking about the world, because it became less me being judgmental, right? Because it's like, well, they can't help it. Like, these people are so stupid. Why do they do that? But it's like, that's just our nature. And accepting that duality, especially in my own self, that I'm capable of doing really good, but I'm also capable of doing some really jacked up stuff too.
Yep. Yep. We've got both parts. And I think 2020 is a lot about acknowledging that, right? Like acknowledging that.
Right. Yeah. And so yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. What were you going to say?
No, I was just saying that's what I like to do. I like to spend time like just kind of looking at history and seeing where we are, because we always repeat ourselves with
Right. Yeah.
history. Nothing's happening now that's never happened. The Spanish flu happened.
I know, right? It's like,
So it's nothing new. And so, like, you talk to people, younger people, and I had a young person come up to me talking about how the new president was going to change things, and they were quoting some article they read, and I'm like, well, I do have they were talking about oil. I said, you do have a PhD in geology, so I know a little bit about oil. So I said, let me educate you on some things about that. And they were going, really? I said, see, and I wasn't being like judgmental, but I wanted to point out to her, like, you have to be very careful about what you read. And I said, you have to go out and get knowledge for yourself, and not trust what other people are telling you.
So important. So you've already given us so much gold, so many tips, but I always like to go out with, because you actually, I think, started with it, so it might be the same thing, but we'll see, because you've already surprised me in this, so I don't know what's going to happen. But in this moment right now, if you were to leave our listeners with an additional piece of sage wisdom to live a bold life that's true for you, what would that be in this moment?
Gosh, that is
I know, right? When there's so much wisdom abundant within. You have to pick one.
I think for me, you have to be truly honest about yourself. I don't think you can do bold things when you're lying about yourself. And that's one of the things that I had the hardest time learning, was being honest with myself. I know the things that I'm not good at. And so those are the things I need help with. And that's the one thing I would tell people is, you have to be honest with yourself, and you truly have to know who you are in order to be bold, because I don't think you can accomplish those things if you don't know who you are. I just think that you're not going to ever be present in what you're doing, because you're just doing it for the wrong reasons. And so I think it all goes back to the voice and understanding is like, I know, like, Adrian, I'm not good at this. Like, I'm not good with money. I have to get help with it. So
that's beautiful. So y'all, you're all going to take whatever you were meant to take, but that is the last thing, to be honest with yourself. And it's true, right? And it's really a lot of the work of a deep yoga practice, a transformational coaching relationship. It's creating safety for yourself so that you're willing to look within and start to build a relationship with all that stuff and be authentically you. Thank you, Adrian, for the gift of all of this. Every person who comes on here just gives so much. And that is a huge part of why I also bring you on here. You're givers, you're receivers. It's beautiful. So listeners, thank you so much for being with us. And again, if you haven't already written something down, just start with writing it down. Keep it somewhere nearby. Look at it, come back to it. It'll start to birth into something else if you actually pay attention to it. I promise it will. You got to pay attention to it though. You can't just like throw it in a drawer. That's not how anything grows. Plants, people, animals, nothing, right? Keep it out and care for it. And sharing is caring. Please share this with anyone who needs some inspiration, because every single person on here knows what it's like to feel stuck. And they're on here because they were brave enough to get unstuck. It takes some courage to get unstuck. So thank you so much, Adrian. It was such a pleasure to be with you tonight.
Same here. I want to just thank you for having the series. And I hope that people get stuff out of this, but I want to applaud the work that you've done. You've definitely helped me out, and I continue to sort of pass it on and help people along the way. So thank you so much. Much love.
It's the greatest gift. We're making it go viral, right?
Right.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your moment.